The sun was rising over the small town, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Daniel stepped out of his house with a cup of coffee in his hand and looked toward the wide fields that stretched across his ranch. He had worked for years to buy this land, and now it was his pride. The wooden fences stood strong, the grass looked fresh after the morning dew, and in the distance he could see a small figure running in circles. It was a miniature horse, brown with a white patch on its nose, fast and playful. The horse was named Star. Daniel's son, Michael, had raised Star from a foal. Michael was only 12, but he had spent countless hours training and caring for the little horse. Star had become more than just an animal. For Michael, he was a friend, a partner, and a dream. Daniel smiled as he watched his boy run across the field, calling out commands that Star followed with surprising discipline. Life on the ranch was not always easy, but moments like this made every struggle worth it. Daniel's wife, Anna, came to the porch and joined him. She placed her hand on his shoulder and said, "Look at them. Michael is happier here than anywhere else." Daniel nodded. "This is what I wanted for him. A place where he can grow up free and safe." But not everything around the ranch was peaceful. On the edge of Daniel's property lived a woman named Karen. She was the head of the local homeowners association, or HOA as everyone called it. While Daniel's ranch stood just outside the official community, his land bordered the neighborhood. Karen believed she had authority over almost everything, and she liked to show it. She often came by uninvited, pointing out what she thought were problems. If the grass grew too high near the fence, Karen complained. If visitors parked by the road, Karen complained again. Daniel tried to stay calm with her, but he knew Karen was always looking for ways to interfere. She seemed to enjoy reminding people of rules, even when those rules did not apply. That morning, as Michael and Star practiced in the field, Daniel saw Karen walking toward the fence. She wore her usual sharp expression, holding a clipboard under her arm as if she was about to inspect something. Daniel sighed and went to meet her. "Good morning, Karen," Daniel said politely. "Morning," she replied with a tone that was more commanding than friendly. "I wanted to talk about the land at the back of your ranch. You know, the open stretch near the woods." Daniel narrowed his eyes slightly. "What about it?" Karen tapped her pen against the clipboard. "Some of the hunters from the neighborhood have been asking if they can have access. It would save them time instead of driving around to the public grounds. I think it's reasonable." Daniel shook his head. "This is private property. I don't allow hunting here. Michael plays in those fields, and we have animals. It's not safe." Karen frowned. "You should consider being more cooperative. After all, community harmony matters." Daniel crossed his arms. "My responsibility is to my family, not to hunters looking for shortcuts." Karen gave a thin smile that carried no warmth. "You may not realize it, but refusing simple requests can make neighbors unhappy. And unhappy neighbors often bring problems." Daniel's jaw tightened, but he forced himself to remain calm. "Thank you for sharing your opinion. My answer is still no." Without another word, Karen turned and walked away, her heels clicking against the gravel. Daniel watched her go, unease growing in his chest. He knew Karen was not the type to let things go easily. Later that day, Michael came running into the kitchen with Star following close behind. The little horse pushed his nose against the boy's shoulder as if trying to play. "Dad," Michael said, "Star is getting faster. Do you think he can join the fair this year?" Daniel smiled and ruffled his son's hair. "With the way you've been training him, I don't see why not. But remember, it's not just about winning. It's about enjoying the bond you share with him. Michael nodded eagerly. I know, but I want everyone to see how special he is. Anna placed plates on the table for lunch. Star already knows he's special. You've made him that way. The family shared laughter and a meal, but in the back of Daniel's mind, Karen's words echoed like a warning. As the days passed, small signs began to appear. One morning, Daniel found the back gate slightly open even though he always locked it at night. Another evening, Michael said he heard voices near the woods, though when Daniel checked, no one was there. Daniel grew more cautious. He double-checked the fences, secured the barn, and kept a closer eye on the land. He even thought about adding cameras, though he hoped it would not come to that. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky red, Daniel stood at the edge of the ranch. He saw Karen again, this time speaking with two men near the road. They carried hunting gear in their trucks. When they noticed Daniel watching, they quickly drove off, leaving Karen standing with her arms crossed. She gave Daniel a look that felt like a silent challenge. Daniel's heart grew heavy. He had promised his son that the ranch was a safe place. But now, with Karen meddling and strangers showing up, he felt the safety of his family and their beloved horse was at risk. That night, Daniel walked into Michael's room. The boy was already asleep, one arm hanging over the side of the bed, a small smile on his face. On the nightstand lay a picture he had drawn of Star, colorful and full of joy. Daniel looked at the drawing for a long moment and whispered to himself, I won't let anyone take this away from you. But deep down, he knew trouble was only beginning. The following week, life at the ranch carried on, but Daniel could not shake the uneasy feeling in his chest. Every morning he walked the fences, checked the locks, and watched the horizon as if expecting something unusual to appear. Michael, on the other hand, remained cheerful. His days were filled with laughter and training sessions with Star. To him, the world still felt safe, and Daniel wanted to keep it that way. One bright morning, Michael ran to the barn with his little notebook. He had written down all the exercises he wanted to practice with Star. The horse pranced with energy as Michael led him out into the field. Ready, boy? Let's show Dad how good you are today, Michael said with excitement. Anna stood on the porch, smiling warmly as she watched her son and his horse. She loved the bond they shared. Star followed Michael's voice like a loyal companion. When Michael whistled, Star trotted in a circle. When Michael raised his hand, Star stopped. It was a performance that showed patience, love, and trust. Daniel clapped from a distance. You two make a great team, he called out. Michael's eyes shone. We'll win the fair this year, Dad. You'll see. Daniel nodded, but his thoughts quickly shifted when he noticed movement near the far end of the property. A truck slowed by the dirt road that bordered the ranch. He recognized the same two men he had seen with Karen earlier. They did not stop this time, but they drove slowly, looking toward the land as if measuring it. Daniel's stomach tightened. He did not want Michael to notice, so he kept his voice steady. That's enough practice for now, son. Give Star a rest. Michael obeyed, though a bit confused. He led Star back to the barn, humming a tune while the horse walked beside him. That evening, Daniel sat at the kitchen table with Anna. He lowered his voice so Michael would not hear. I think Karen is up to something. I saw those men again today. They were scouting the property. Anna frowned. She has no right to bring people here. This land is yours. Daniel rubbed his forehead. I know, but she seems determined. She talks about community harmony, but I think she just wants control. If she gives hunters access, our animals and even Michael could be in danger. Anna reached for his hand. Then we must protect what's ours. You can't let her push you. The next day, Daniel decided to speak with Karen directly. He walked across the road and knocked on her door. Karen opened it with her usual sharp look. Daniel, she said flatly, what a surprise. I'll make this simple, Daniel said, his voice firm. This is my land. No one hunts there. Keep your neighbors away from my fences. Karen raised her eyebrows. Daniel, you're being unreasonable. The land is wide and unused in some areas. Why not share it? Hunters are part of the community too. Daniel shook his head. My son plays there. We have animals. Sharing is not an option. Karen crossed her arms, her tone turning cold. You may think you stand alone, but you don't. The neighborhood trusts me. If they want access, they will find a way. Daniel stepped back, his patience wearing thin. If anyone steps on my property without permission, it will be trespassing. Remember that. With that, he turned and left. Karen's eyes followed him until he disappeared down the road. That evening, Daniel told Anna what had happened. She bit her lip, worry shining in her eyes. She won't stop, Daniel. You know that. I'll be ready, he said. But the pressure began to grow in small ways. 2 days later, Daniel found a note tucked under his front gate. It read, be a good neighbor. Allow access. The handwriting was rough and unsigned. Another time, he found footprints near the barn that did not belong to his family. Michael noticed the tension too. One night, while brushing Star's mane, he looked at his father and asked, Dad, why do you look worried all the time? Did I do something wrong? Daniel crouched beside his son and shook his head. No, son. You did nothing wrong. I just want to keep you and Star safe. That's my job. Michael hugged Star's neck. We'll be safe here. This is our home. Daniel smiled, though his heart felt heavy. Children believed in safety because they trusted their parents. He could not fail that trust. One Saturday morning, while Michael was riding Star in the yard, Karen appeared again. She leaned against the fence with her clipboard and called out, nice horse. Shame if he gets restless with all that land closed off. Animals like to run free, you know. Daniel walked over, his jaw tight. Enough games, Karen. Stay off my property. Karen smirked. You'll regret making enemies, Daniel. Mark my words. Michael heard the words and looked at his father with wide eyes. Daniel placed a calming hand on his shoulder and whispered, don't listen to her. But that evening, Daniel sat alone on the porch, staring at the open fields. The sunset painted the sky golden, but instead of peace, he felt a storm gathering. He knew Karen was testing his patience, but worse, she was bringing others into the picture. He could not predict what they would do next. Anna joined him quietly, handing him a cup of tea. What if she goes further? What if she really lets them in? Daniel's hand tightened around the cup. Then I'll have to fight back, but not with anger. With proof. If I can show what she's doing, maybe I can stop her. Anna nodded, though worry lingered in her eyes. The night grew dark, and silence wrapped around the ranch. But in the far distance, Daniel thought he heard the faint sound of an engine starting, then fading into the woods. His heart pounded. Someone was testing the boundaries again. The next morning, Daniel set out early. He walked the backfield near the woods and found fresh tire marks in the soft dirt. His fears were confirmed. Someone had entered during the night. When he returned, Michael came running with Star at his side, full of joy and energy. "Dad, Star is ready for the fair. Can we practice the jumps today?" Daniel looked at his son, then at the horse, and forced a smile. "Of course, son. Let's practice." But inside, he knew the battle with Karen and her allies was only beginning. And he feared what it might cost. The days that followed were uneasy for Daniel. He could not ignore the tire marks he had seen near the woods, nor the late-night sounds that drifted through the fields. Each night he lay awake, listening for footsteps or engines, while Anna slept lightly beside him. The peace of the ranch, once so steady, now felt fragile. Michael, however, still carried his bright spirit. Every morning he rose early, eager to spend time with Star. The miniature horse greeted him with a soft neigh and playful jumps. Michael brushed his mane, checked his hooves, and led him into the yard. "We'll be the best team, Star," he whispered. The little horse seemed to understand, pressing his nose against the boy's chest. Daniel often watched them from the porch. He admired his son's determination but worried about what lay ahead. He wanted to tell Michael about Karen's schemes, yet he held back. A child should not carry such burdens, he thought. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Daniel noticed a small light flickering near the woods. He grabbed his flashlight and went to investigate. When he reached the far fence, he found a pile of empty cans and a small fire pit still warm. His chest tightened. Someone had been camping there. The tracks around the pit led deeper into the trees. Daniel returned home with heavy steps. Anna met him at the door, concern in her eyes. "What did you find?" "Signs of trespassers," Daniel said. "They're getting bolder. This isn't just curiosity anymore." Anna placed a hand on his arm. "We should call the sheriff." Daniel nodded. "I'll do it tomorrow. I need to protect this land before something worse happens." The next day, Daniel drove into town and spoke with the sheriff. The officer listened carefully, taking notes. "We'll keep an eye on the area," he promised. "But without clear evidence of trespassing, it's hard to act. If you see anyone on your property again, take pictures if you can." Daniel agreed, though disappointment lingered in his heart. He had hoped for stronger action. Meanwhile, Karen's behavior grew sharper. She stopped Daniel on the road one afternoon and said, "You're making things harder than they need to be. Hunters have rights too." Daniel kept his voice steady. "Not on my land." Karen gave him a thin smile. "We'll see about that." That night, Michael sat at the kitchen table, sketching another picture of Star. He showed it proudly to his parents. The drawing showed Star jumping over a wooden bar, his mane flying in the air. "I think he can do this for real," Michael said. Anna kissed the top of his head. "You draw him with so much love. No wonder he listens to you." Daniel forced a smile. He wanted to share his son's joy, but his thoughts returned to the fire pit by the woods. He could not shake the fear that danger was inching closer. The following weekend, the family prepared for a small local fair. Michael wanted to bring Star to practice in the open field where the events would take place. Daniel agreed, thinking it might lift the boy's spirits. They loaded Star into the trailer and drove to the fairground. The field buzzed with families, children, and animals. Michael guided Star through the practice jumps while other kids watched. Some clapped in delight when the miniature horse cleared the bars with surprising speed. Michael's smile shone brighter than ever. Daniel and Anna exchanged a proud look. For a while, the worries faded, replaced by the warmth of community and laughter. But when Daniel glanced toward the edge of the fairground, his heart sank. There, standing with folded arms, was Karen. She watched Michael and Star with an expression that mixed curiosity and something colder. Beside her were the same two hunters Daniel had seen before. Daniel clenched his fists. He wanted to confront her but chose to stay silent for Michael's sake. Still, the image of Karen whispering to the hunters stayed with him long after they returned home. That night, Daniel decided it was time to take stronger steps. He purchased motion sensor cameras and placed them around the ranch. He also fixed the locks on the gates and added stronger chains. If anyone tried to sneak in again, he would know. Days turned into nights, and the cameras stood like silent guards. For a time, nothing unusual happened, and Daniel almost felt relief. But one morning, as he checked the recordings, his stomach dropped. The footage showed the two hunters walking near the backfield, guided by none other than Karen. They pointed toward the barn and the open pastures as if planning something. Daniel showed the video to Anna. Her face grew pale. "She's bringing them onto your land without permission. This is proof." Daniel nodded. "Yes, but I need to be careful. If I accuse her too fast, she'll deny everything. I have to catch her in the act." Later that day, Daniel walked to the barn where Michael was brushing Star. The boy looked up with a smile. "Dad, he's ready for the fair. Can we add higher jumps?" Daniel placed a hand on his son's shoulder. "We'll practice, but remember, safety comes first. Always." Michael nodded, unaware of the storm brewing around them. That evening, Daniel sat on the porch, his eyes scanning the horizon. He thought of all he had built, the sacrifices he had made, and the dreams his son carried. He knew Karen's plans threatened not just the land but the heart of his family. When night fell, Daniel decided to patrol the ranch once more. The air was cool, and the stars lit the sky. As he neared the woods, he heard voices low, hushed, and moving closer. He froze, then slowly crept behind a tree. The hunters were there again, their flashlights cutting through the dark. And with them, unmistakably, was Karen. Daniel's heart pounded. He held his breath and listened. "Don't worry," Karen whispered. "Daniel can't stop you forever. This land should be shared, and soon he'll have no choice." One of the hunters chuckled. "As long as no one catches us, we'll get what we want." Daniel clenched his fists. He wanted to step forward, to shout, to chase them away. But instead, he stayed hidden. He knew he needed more evidence, something undeniable. When they finally left, Daniel returned home with a heavy heart. He looked at Michael's room, where his son slept peacefully, Star's picture still on the nightstand. Daniel whispered, "I will not let her take this from us." The ranch was his family's dream. And he was ready to fight for it. The morning sun rose gently over the ranch, casting long shadows across the fields. Michael was already outside, running with Star as if nothing in the world could go wrong. His laughter echoed across the yard, filling the air with warmth. But Daniel stood on the porch, his arms crossed, his mind heavy. He had seen enough in the last few days to know trouble was near. The video footage of Karen and the hunters weighed on him. He replayed it in his head over and over, each time feeling more certain that they would not stop until they had taken something from him. Daniel had already called the sheriff again, sending copies of the recordings. The officer promised to look into it, but Daniel knew how slow such matters could be. Anna joined him on the porch, holding 2 cups of tea. She placed one in his hand and said softly, "You've been watching the fields every day, Daniel. It's eating you inside." Daniel sighed. "I can't help it. She's planning something. I can feel it." Anna looked toward Michael and Star. The boy was guiding the horse over a small wooden pole, cheering each time Star jumped gracefully. "For his sake, we have to stay strong," she whispered. That afternoon, Daniel took extra care around the barn. He checked the locks twice, filled Star's water trough, and spread fresh hay. Michael hummed happily as he brushed Star's coat. "Dad," he asked, "do you think Star knows what's happening? Like, does he know people want to take our land?" Daniel knelt beside his son. "Star knows you love him, and that's all he needs. As long as you stay by his side, he'll stay brave." Michael smiled and hugged the horse's neck. Star responded with a gentle nudge, his eyes calm and trusting. Later that evening, as the family sat down for dinner, a sound cut through the quiet. It was sharp, startling, and it came from the backfield. Daniel froze, fork halfway to his mouth. Anna's eyes widened. Michael looked confused. Without a word, Daniel rose and went to the door. He grabbed his flashlight and stepped outside. The night air was cool, and crickets chirped in the grass. He walked quickly toward the sound, his heart pounding. Near the back fence, he found a broken section of wood. Fresh boot prints marked the dirt. His stomach tightened. Someone had forced their way in. Daniel returned to the house with a grim face. "They're on the land," he said. Anna's hand flew to her mouth. "Tonight?" "Yes," Daniel answered firmly. "Stay with Michael. I'll check the cameras." He hurried to his study, pulled up the footage, and there it was, 2 men moving across the field with flashlights. They were the same hunters from before. One carried a long bag slung over his shoulder. And walking with them was Karen, pointing toward the barn as if guiding them. Daniel's chest burned with anger, but he forced himself to stay calm. He copied the footage onto a separate drive, then picked up the phone and called the sheriff. "They're here right now," he said. "You need to come." The sheriff promised to send a deputy, but Daniel knew it would take time. For now, he had to protect his family. He returned to the living room where Anna and Michael waited. Michael clutched Star's halter, his face pale. "Dad, what's happening?" Daniel knelt before him. "Listen, son. Some people are making bad choices. But we're together, and we'll be safe. I promise." Michael nodded slowly, though fear shone in his eyes. The minutes stretched like hours as they waited. Outside, the sounds of movement grew louder: the crunch of boots, the whisper of voices, the creak of the barn door being tested. Daniel gripped the edge of the table, every muscle tense. Finally, the distant hum of an engine broke the silence. Red and blue lights flashed at the far end of the road. The deputy's car rolled up, and the trespassers scattered like shadows. Daniel rushed to the porch in time to see the hunters running toward the woods, while Karen stood frozen near the fence. The deputy stepped out, shining a bright light. "What's going on here?" he called. Karen immediately straightened her shoulders. "This is a misunderstanding," she said smoothly. "I was just walking with neighbors." Daniel stepped forward, anger tightening his voice. You were leading them onto my land. I have footage. This is not a misunderstanding. The deputy frowned. Let's see the footage. Daniel nodded. Follow me. He led the officer inside and showed him the recordings. The video clearly showed Karen and the hunters crossing into the property. The deputy's eyes narrowed. This is serious. Trespassing is no small matter. I'll be reporting this. Karen's confident expression faltered. She tried to argue, but the deputy silenced her. You need to leave the property right now, ma'am. And you'll be hearing from the sheriff's office soon. With a stiff glare at Daniel, Karen turned and walked away into the night. The hunters were already gone, lost in the woods. When the deputy left, Daniel closed the door and leaned against it, exhausted. Anna touched his arm gently. You did the right thing. Now there's proof, and the law is on your side. Michael, still holding Star's halter, looked up at his father. Dad, I was scared. I thought they were going to take Star. Daniel knelt and hugged his son tightly. I'll never let that happen. Star is part of this family. No one can take him from us. The family sat together late into the night, the bond between them stronger than ever. But even as Daniel comforted his son, a small voice inside him whispered that Karen would not stop so easily. The next morning, the ranch seemed calm again. Sunlight bathed the fields, and the dew sparkled on the grass. Michael ran with Star, laughing as though the night's trouble had never happened. But Daniel knew the fight was far from over. Karen had been embarrassed, yes, but her pride was strong, and she would not forgive easily. Daniel stood by the fence, watching his son's joy, and vowed silently to himself. Whatever comes next, I'll be ready. The ranch was more than land. It was their life, their dream, their safe place. And Daniel would guard it, no matter the cost. The next few days passed in uneasy quiet. The sheriff's office had taken Daniel's footage and opened an official case. For the first time in weeks, Daniel felt the law was on his side. Still, he could not ignore the look Karen had given him before leaving that night. It was not the look of someone who had admitted defeat. It was the look of someone planning the next move. Michael, however, seemed free of worry. He spent his mornings riding Star and his afternoons sketching new tricks he wanted to teach. To him, the night of trespassers already felt far away, like a bad dream. Daniel admired his son's courage but knew it was his duty to carry the weight of caution. One evening, as the family gathered on the porch, Anna spoke softly. Do you think she will try again? Daniel stared at the fading horizon. Karen doesn't like to lose. She may lie low for a while, but I don't think she's done. Pride can be stronger than reason. Anna nodded, her hands clasped tightly. Then we must be prepared. That night, Daniel checked the cameras once more before bed. Everything seemed calm, no signs of intruders, no unusual sounds. For the first time in days, he allowed himself to sleep deeply. The next morning began with peace. Michael laughed as Star trotted around the yard, showing off the new jump he had mastered. Anna clapped from the porch. Daniel stood nearby, his heart swelling with pride. For a brief moment, the ranch felt like home again, safe, warm, and whole. But the peace did not last long. By afternoon, a letter arrived in the mail. It carried the seal of the Homeowners Association. Daniel opened it with steady hands, though his gut twisted. Inside was a notice signed by Karen, demanding that the unused land on Daniel's ranch be opened for community access. The letter carried no legal authority, but the tone was sharp, filled with threats of continued community complaints and possible legal review. Daniel shook his head in disbelief. "She's trying to scare us," he said. Anna frowned. "She can't do this. The land is yours." "She can't," Daniel agreed. "But she wants us to think she can." Michael looked up from the table, his young face filled with concern. "Dad, why is she doing this? Doesn't she see that this is our home?" Daniel placed a reassuring hand on his son's shoulder. "Some people don't understand what home means, son. But we do. And that's why we won't let anyone take it." That night, Daniel wrote his own letter. He sent copies of the footage, the sheriff's report, and his deed to the HOA board. His words were clear and firm: "This land belongs to my family. Any further attempt to enter will be trespassing, and the law will handle it." For days, silence followed. Karen did not appear at the fence. The hunters did not drive by. Even the neighborhood seemed quieter, as if waiting to see what would happen next. But Daniel stayed alert. He checked the fences each morning, the cameras each night. He wanted no surprises. Finally, one Saturday morning, the sheriff himself drove up to the ranch. He stepped out of his car with a folder in hand and greeted Daniel with a firm handshake. "I wanted to tell you in person," the sheriff said. "We reviewed your footage and the deputy's report. Karen and the men were warned officially. If they trespass again, there will be charges. I also spoke with the HOA board. They understand this land is outside their authority." Karen's letters mean nothing. Relief washed over Daniel like a wave. "Thank you, Sheriff. I can't tell you how much this means to us." The sheriff gave a small smile. "You stood your ground, Daniel. Not everyone does. Now the law is clear. If she pushes again, she'll face consequences." As the sheriff left, Daniel felt the tension in his chest ease for the first time in weeks. He walked back to the porch, where Anna and Michael waited eagerly. "What did he say?" Anna asked. Daniel's eyes softened. "It's over. She has no power here. The law is on our side." Michael let out a cheer, throwing his arms around Star's neck. "Did you hear that, Star? We're safe." Anna smiled through tears. Finally. From that day forward, the ranch returned to its rhythm of peace. The fields once again held only the sounds of hooves and laughter. Michael practiced every day, training Star with patience and joy. Soon the county fair arrived, and Daniel and Anna watched proudly as their son guided the little horse through each event. Star leapt gracefully over the bars, moved smoothly through patterns, and followed Michael's commands as if they were two parts of the same soul. When the judges announced Michael and Star as winners in their category, the crowd erupted in applause. Daniel felt his heart swell with pride. He looked at his wife, her eyes shining with joy, and then at his son, who held the ribbon high with a smile brighter than the sun. Back at the ranch that evening, Michael placed the ribbon on the wall of the barn, right above Star's stall. "This is for you, boy," he whispered, patting the horse's neck. Star neighed softly, as if answering. Daniel stood in the doorway of the barn, his heart full. All the fear, all the nights of worry, seemed distant now. What mattered most was safe the family, the ranch, and the bond between a boy and his horse. Anna joined him, resting her head on his shoulder. "We made it through," she said quietly. "Yes," Daniel replied. "We made it through." As the sun set over the ranch, painting the sky in shades of gold and red, the family stood together in the glow of peace. The land stretched wide and free before them, untouched, untaken. It belonged to them, as it always had. And for the first time in many weeks, Daniel believed that it always would.